Hello, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. Mr. Viteri, let's get to it. So, we're going to discuss mining today. Mining is probably one of the worst things that you could possibly do to our planet. It's similar to plowing, if you think about it. But with mining, you don't replant with any type of vegetation. Typically, with mining, you're going to be destroying the surface of a particular environment. Either it's a mountain or a plain or somewhere where you have found some usable substance that you need. Now, we do need to mine to live the way we are currently living. The computer chips, the cell phones, the pipes in our homes. We're going to talk more about that. The metals for our cars, so on and so forth. So I'm not saying it's not a necessary thing. It is a necessary thing, and there are things that we can do to minimize the environmental catastrophes that are caused by mining. However, it does destroy a large portion. It does do a lot of destruction along the process, and we don't do that much mining in the United States. Um, unfortunately, there's so many environmental laws here in the United States that it's typically more profitable to mine in other countries. Now, this is typically touching upon some issues in inequalities, but I remember seeing a free response question in regards to why are typically products made in other countries and then shipped into the United States. Well, as opposed to other countries and our country, we have very stringent environmental policy laws, and so also we have a minimum wage here. We have unions here. We have laws and regulations in regards to very strict laws and regulations in regards to human health. And when you're thinking about this, if we are digging up dirt, rocks, there's a lot of dust. So you can think of the dust particles in there. If we are melting down something, there's a lot of fumes. Think about the air quality. So it's not an easy job whatsoever. So there's going to have to be a lot of PPE, personal protective equipment, and it's dangerous. It is quite dangerous. Typically, coal farmers, or not coal farmers, coal miners. Have suffered from something called black lung disease, and and if you did an autopsy on a coal miner from the 60s, previously to the 60s, 40s, 30s, 1800s, you would see black lungs. We'll see more of those pictures when we talk about indoor air pollution and stuff like that. But for right now, just understand that it's a dangerous job. And so a lot of these, uh, it's easier for a company to, I guess, purchase the ore, the valuable mineral that we're looking for, whether it's gold, it's platinum, it's silver, it's copper, it's brass, in from another country, and then take those products and then make it into the products that we necessarily need. And so let's go more into mining. Okay, and why is it so destructive? Well, we are digging up the dirt, so we are loosening up the dirt. We are destroying whatever's on the surface. So if there was a forest, the surface forest is gone now. The grass is gone. All the vegetation is going to be gone, and we're now digging. And as we are digging, we're crushing up boulders. And so it's so it's so weird. Previously to understanding how this worked, I would think like, oh, gold is going to be in an area like I go into a cave and everything is just gold. I found gold. In reality, it's not necessarily like that. And copper too. Like if I go into a cave, I'm like, oh, everything is copper, and I could just cut out the copper. The reality of it is that there's a big boulder, and that big boulder may have, let's say, 5% copper inside of it, maybe. And that might be a good thing. And so let's say if you had 100-pound boulder, and let's say 5%, and I don't even know if I'm doing this right, 5% of that was copper. Let's just say you got 5 pounds of copper out of a 100-pound boulder. That might actually be very profitable when you think about it. And I truly doubt that we have found reserves, or have easy access to reserves that have that much quantity. It's probably far less than that. And then with gold, far less than that as well. I mean, imagine that, 100-pound boulder, and then you got 5 pounds of gold. You'd be a bazillionaire. So it might be a fraction of that, 0.15 percent of a particular mineral that you're looking for. So understand that term ore. Understand that we're looking for places that may have a valuable mineral that we may need, titanium, lithium, all these valuable things that we need to make our products. Okay, so we're digging up the earth, and primarily in environmental science, we're going to be talking about coal. And so we're typically digging up the earth to obtain the coal, or gold. We could also say gold, because gold is another issue as well, which we'll get into detail. Okay, so we're digging it up, and this is going to expose the soil. So the soil can typically wash away, and now it's eroded. And if we don't have any soil, then that means later on we're not going to be able to use this for a forest, a farm, or any other type of things. So this is going to be a really bad thing for the environment. There are things that we could do to make it better, but just understand that mining is pretty bad. So we have two different types. We have surface mining and subsurface mining. One's on the surface, and one is underground. Now, when we are are let's say looking for coal, and we have these rocks that we're getting, and coal is actually found in a slate, and it is just coal. Gold would be mixture, copper would be a mixture in ore, but coal, for primarily, it's going to be stored in an area, and that could be stored. But sometimes there is some overburden where we're mixing with the coal, and that's going to have some sulfur in it. Okay. And all the rocks that you do not use, or being the rock that you use, all the rock that's exposed or is called overburden. Now, this is going to have a lot of sulfur, and if we leave this at the surface, water can now hit it, and water and sulfur is going to make sulfuric acid. And so when it rains, that sulfur is going to run off, and that's going to be called acid mine drainage. So one environmental hazard from mining, other than, of course, habitat destruction, could be acid mine drainage, which is going to cause like basically acid drainage from an area that was mined. Okay, and so there's another one that you could think of. All right, this is a huge machine uh, designed to dig rock and expose ore. Okay. So, like I said before, the mining is going to involve removing the vegetation. There's dynamite used. Think about all the microbes, the fungi, the bacteria. That beautiful ecosystem is now going to be destroyed. All right. Another term for the waste materials and the overburden is going to be slag and tailings. So just understand those terms as well. All right. Now, coal, methane, and petroleum, crude oil, they're basically all fossil fuels. When we really think about it, they're all carbon chains. And where have they been made from? They are all made from long dead prehistoric organisms, typically in maybe a swamp or a bog or a lot of vegetation that got compressed over time. You find coal, and sometimes you may find oil in the same region, and you might find methane in the same region too. And what distinguishes the difference between the oil, the coal, and the methane is how they're processed. And how they're processed in the ground really typically depends on the pressure, the heat, the time that it was basically made. So sometimes when you find coal, there's also like a pocket of methane on top. And so typically, when you are mining for coal, you're going to release some of that methane into the atmosphere. And once again, we know that methane is a greenhouse gas stronger than CO2, so it has a greenhouse potential greater than one, and therefore it is something that needs to have our attention, and we need to become aware of that. Now, another thing that was on the APE CED um, course description, course course and exam description is going to be as the coal reserves get depleted and not as accessible, the cost of coal is going to increase. You might not know that we don't what we use coal for, but we typically generate a lot of our electricity with coal. We're actually switching to methane. Um, there's a lot of debate in regards to clean coal technology versus no coal, but we use a lot of methane here in Jersey. And I think we have a cogeneration plant that uses a combination of methane, which is natural gas, and coal. Coal would be the dirtiest burning of all the fossil fuels. If we particularly use them for a power plant, coal, when I say dirty, meaning that it's going to produce a lot more, um, let's say, sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere. So it's going to produce more impurities as opposed to methane or gasoline, which is refined from petroleum. All right, let's continue. So we got overburden. We understand what ore is. Here's some pictures and try to get familiar with these terms. Okay, we have surface mining techniques, all right, and undermining techniques. One of the terms that you may see is mountaintop removal, and this is simply going to go all the way up to a mountaintop, and we're going to start digging. And so this is a surface type of technique. We're getting rid of the topography in the land, and getting rid of the topography of the land makes land very flat. It doesn't allow the water to penetrate and carry nutrients. Might not necessarily be a good thing. There's contour mining. So this black stuff in the center here is all of the coal that they're particularly trying to get during this. All right, so this would be contour mining. So you're not removing the mine, but you're mining with the contours of that. This is going to be drift mining. Do you have to know all these? No mountaintop removal. All right, and know that an underground mining technique involves going in the ground. Now, I think a, a, um, there was a catastrophe. I think in Chile, there was a story of some miners got trapped in an underground mine, and they were trapped there for a number of days. Can you imagine how scary that would be? Uh, so sometimes miners are in here and there's a collapse. Okay, when there's a collapse, now you're stuck underneath there, and how are they going to come get you? So they have to redig that hole, and that could take a long time. They don't know where you are, and if your equipment is not penetrating through rock, like just sometimes no communication whatsoever. So it can be extremely scary. So there's one funny story that I heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it was the Chilean miners, and you know, all of them had these wives, and they were, and some of them had girlfriends, and so on and so forth, and they were trapped, and they were trapped for like a certain amount of days. I think it was like a month, and then they finally got through to them, and they started pulling them out one by one, and it was just like, oh, it's amazing people. They were hugging their families. It was gorgeous. It was an amazing, amazing, amazing thing to happen. And this one guy comes out, and all of a sudden he's hugging his girlfriend, blah blah blah, and then his wife came, and his wife started saying, who's this?" So then the miner tried to jump back in the hole. He didn't want to have to deal with that bad guy. I don't know if it's true. You should probably look that up. Maybe you shouldn't look that up. All right, let's keep going. So this is strip mining. Okay, and this is going to be at the surface in strips. Now look at all the vegetation. The vegetation was removed. Okay, and now when it rains, this rain is going to drag with it any of the exposed rock. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this pool down here. This is acid mine drainage. Okay. And this is bad stuff. Nothing's going to be able to live in this area. Okay. Matter of fact, this whole area may be barren for quite some time, unless some techniques are used to restore this location. All right. So this is surface mining. All right. Now, it's probably like so. I wrote over here. It's probably the worst thing that you could possibly do. And so, what can we do? Okay. What we can do is restore and reclaim an area. Okay. So if we destroy an area, all right. If we destroy an area, and let's say we had dug all the rocks out of a hole. Do we leave the rocks in a big old pile, the overburden in a big old pile, the slag and tailings in a big old pile? Or when we're done, do we take that overburden, the slag and the tailings, and we put it back in the hole? That would be one technique that you could potentially do. However, if you are a business person, that's going to take a lot of hours. You're not getting no more ore, right? You're just doing an environmental, you're restoring that area, but you're really not doing something to get something out of it. Does that make any sense? So it's going to add on to your costs. Okay. But that is something that you could potentially do. And so putting those rocks back where they found them, the overburden, even though they received all the good stuff, then that could be one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do is maybe bring some soil in from somewhere else and now plant some grasses, plant some trees, or restore and reclaim that area. Make it back to that area where it once was previously. I've seen them do this in landfills. You'd be surprised. There's certain landfills in Sayreville and Staten Island, and if you're driving through Brooklyn, sometimes you look over and it just looks like, wow, that's a mountain. It's a weird mountain, but it's a landfill. It's a landfill that was capped, and then they put dirt on top, and then they planted it on top, and now it's a beautiful ecosystem. And I believe when we used to go to the wastewater treatment plant, we used to see uh, like bear scat and deer scat. We used to see some deer right where there was a landfill. That's beautiful when you think about it. And so restoration and reclamation, know those two vocabulary words. They're terms used to describe how to fix an area when you are going to um, uh, uh, destroy it when you are mining. Okay. Okay. Now, let's continue about this ore. Okay. And let what are some techniques used to get this ore? Well, one technique is called smelting, and smelting is going to involve crushing the rocks up, and so you have these big machines to crush these boulders, and now melting the rock. So you're gonna get them really, really hot. Certain certain elements, gold, silver, all of them are gonna have different boiling points. And when you boil something or heat something up so much that they'll start to separate, and then you could pour off and basically separate and get the mineral ore that you particularly want. Now that sounds great. However, there could be some cons associated with that. When you're melting rock, rock is not just gold and, let's say, carbon. It could be gold, carbon, mercury, lead, sulfur, nickel, every single element in the solid form in the ground. So when you put immense heat on that, you could be releasing tremendous amount of air pollution. And so smelting, which is the melting of rocks for purification of ore, is going to often release lead in the atmosphere, mercury in the atmosphere, SO2, sulfur dioxide, of course, CO2 as well. So smelting, not everybody wants to live next to a smelting plant. Once again, the liability here and the environmental laws, smelting is not necessarily a good thing. You can think of the air quality in that area that's going to suffer due to that. All right. Now, gold is very, very, very expensive. In order to separate it from its ore, in order to obtain this ore, okay, or the mineral from the ore being that term. Did I mess up what that ore is? Ore is the term to describe the big rock that has the valuable mineral. So you have to process the ore to get that mineral. I hope I clarified that. Okay, and so there is overburden, which wouldn't even be the ore. All right, overburden is the stuff, and then ore is like that rock, and then inside I want to get that valuable mineral. All right. Now, in in trying to get the gold out of gold ore, you're going to use cyanide and acids. And now you can leach or pull that gold out, but now you have some leftover toxins, and what are you going to do that have cyanide and have acids? And typically, if those are not processed well, or they're just left in the ground, they can pollute waterways or underground water resources, And there are certain countries that have a lot of issues regarding cyanide in their water, India being particularly. A lot of their wells, unfortunately, have cyanide, so you can look that up. That's a big case study. So cyanide, due to the purification of gold, and it infiltrates the water, and that's a huge issue. Okay, it's a big, big issue. The big issue also when smelting is mercury and lead into the atmosphere. These are the things that you need to understand with these things. All right. So we talked about acid mine drainage. Once again, with that strip mining, when it rains, the water could come down, and now you have this disgusting water. I think a student sent me a picture. Is this acid mine drainage? And to my knowledge, there is no mining going on around here in Jersey. Of course, I never really Googled that. Um, it could be, but it looked like it looked just like this picture. But I don't think that was that. All right. So this could be also high iron content, and that's probably what that other picture my student was sending to me. All right. Okay. Now, when a company decides to dig for a particular mineral, they have to do a cost benefit analysis. All right. Um, how much is it going to cost me to get the mineral here in the United States? Okay. How much profit am I going to make? Okay. And if I'm not going to make any profit, there's no purpose of doing it. And so they may ship overseas or even ship, uh, uh, lease a particular part of land from another country, bring the heavy machinery and do that in another country, and then come back. All right. Typically, externalities are not taken into consideration. Just a good word to know. Externalities are going to be costs that aren't associated with the price. Okay. For instance, the mining in an area, how much do I have to pay the people? How much gas? How much machinery? Blah blah blah. That can be assessed. What can't be assessed is, this was the golden toad and that was its habitat, and that was the last place that this organism was going to live, and that controlled the bug population, which the bug population, blah blah blah. That would be an externality. All right. Okay. I think we are done with mining, and have a great day. Bye now.